Hey everyone, it's Mike, your safety guy with Nextech, and this is the Service Call Podcast. This is a show where we talk about the people who actually keep the lights on, the air running, and the job moving forward. But the show goes beyond our industry to explore resilience, leadership, and lessons from people who answer the call to serve. We'll feature techs, leaders, and a few wild cards, and real stories from the field, the shop, and everywhere in between. No corporate scripts, no sales pitch, just real conversations with people who know what it means to show up and get it done. Let's roll. So hey guys, welcome to the Service Call Podcast. Today we have an amazing guest. We have Jenny Stentz on the phone. She's the CEO of Nextech. We also have a good friend of both of us. We have Jerry Hahn on. He's going to be joining us.
Also known as Chair Bear.
Hey, I know, Chair Bear. Hey, Chair Bear. But he's a super great guy, and he'll be joining us as well. Like I said, we have Jenny Stentz on the phone. She's the CEO of Nextech, and she has an amazing background. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. She was an intern for a company, and then she became a regional sales manager, then became director of healthcare solutions, and then regional GM for Johnson Controls. Then she made a big leap. She went from a regional GM to vice president of energy solutions for JCI. And then you've had multiple VP roles, and you're on a board for Culligan Water, I believe.
Yep.
And then she became the CEO of Nextech. Welcome. How are you?
I am amazing.
How did you get to where you are today? You probably, we spoke in a pre-interview about some of your jobs that you had before. What were some of the things you did before you became this driving force?
Well, my first job was not too luxurious, but it was stringing tennis rackets. I had a passion for tennis. I played competitively. It was a great way for me to test the new equipment that was coming out. And then I kind of parlayed that into tennis lessons for youth and a youth tennis program that I was able to kind of teach kids, run a team, compete with other teams. And it kept me swinging a racket as often as I could. And as much as I love that, I knew there were bigger fish to fry, things that I could do, probably not stay in the sun all day long. So my tennis career was short-lived once I realized.
But did that move you all the way through college?
That was all the way through college. I lifeguarded a little bit. I taught the tennis lessons with tennis programs. And
so you get out of college and then you became an intern. Was that your first position?
Actually, yeah. While I was in college, I ran across first a company called Comtech in really kind of the IT space. And I did an internship over a summer with Comtech, which was a lot of fun, being able to kind of use the latest and greatest technologies for networks and network architecture. And then I ran across Johnson Controls, and I actually created an internship. It wasn't a job I applied for, but I left my graduation date off, went through an interview process. And then when they realized I wasn't graduating, they said, well, would you intern? And I said, well, that would be great. So it was a great way for me to kind of finish out my last semester of college, but start working with a company.
So I'm sure, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm sure leaving a company after 29 was heartbreaking.
Leaving is, I guess it's never easy. For me, I think I was always energized by the next opportunity, the next challenge. And JCI provided a lot of different challenges. I moved around quite a bit in my career. A lot of those were lateral moves. It wasn't always necessarily this big promotion, but I had the opportunity to work across the world, see a lot of countries, do a lot of things. When you work in a big company, you can gain a lot of capabilities, a lot of skills, get exposed to so many different things. And it was at a point where I started saying, gosh, I would be able to do everything from sales through operations, talk to customers, and really influence the culture, influence the strategy, and make sure the things that we're building all sort of go together and fit together. That's tough to do in a big company. Big companies are very matrixed. And so, there's a lot of other bosses and a lot of other approvals and, things that you have to go through. So it was tough to leave JCI, but I was ready. I was ready for kind of that next challenge, and I didn't think I was going to get it there. And so sometimes you just have to sort of push out of the comfort zone. The toughest part is leaving people that you've worked with, but you don't leave them. I mean, I'm still alive. I'm still kicking. I'm still here. I'm still friends with all these people. And, that's a network that I leverage that network all of the time, and they leverage me when they need things. So whether, it's hard to leave a place or not, my coaching is do it if you're ready. don't do it if you're not ready. But if you're ready for that next challenge and you can't find it there, then that network, the experiences, they go with you. You don't leave that behind.
I worked for Jerry at another company, and he's a big part of helped me get to where I am today. What about you, bud? You kind of in the same background where you believe in culture and you believe in those things, correct?
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more, Jenny, with what you were saying. It's you as you go along throughout your career and you're on this trajectory, you make friends and people that are borderline family, and you connect and you grow together. I think sometimes we say things like we trauma bonded, and so we're now friends for life, right? Because we went through some stuff together. But I think it's great to hear that you're focused on, and I can attest to the fact that you're doing this, influencing the culture of a company, kind of in all aspects. And I think it's really interesting how an organization takes on the personality of its leader. I can say that since you've been here, I've had a lot more fun. And I really appreciate that. I think, there's a lot to be said for knowing that your leadership cares about you. I was a technician like Mike. I was in the field, and when you're sitting there in your van and it's 100+ degrees and, it's you've had a rough day, it's nice to know that people care about you one way or the other. And I know that's real with you because I've been around you enough to know, and I know that's real with Mike, and I feel the same way. We genuinely care about these folks and everybody that works for us. And it's like you said, sometimes hard to influence everybody. You feel like maybe you're trying to boil the ocean a little bit, but it starts at the top. So I appreciate what you said there about making sure that people feel it. And I know that as a team, we're working hard to do that in our company. And I know that any company that you work for, it feels good to be part of something. And so I was glad to hear you say that part. But like Mike, we've known each other a long time, and we're still here and working hard to make sure that people know that we care about them. And so I appreciate what you said there.
And Jerry's interesting because Jerry's worked for a large publicly traded company. Jerry's worked for small companies. Jerry's owned his own company.
Right.
So you've seen a lot of different companies, cultures, teams. I generally believe people leave a company when either they don't like the culture, they're not sort of getting the development, or maybe the manager, that they're working for. So if they don't feel like that is conducive to growing. And you've seen a lot of different environments, certainly, Jerry.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that I was going to ask you is that you're a different kind of CEO and you're a different kind of leader. It's that the fact that you spent 29 years working for mechanical contractors and in different roles. A lot of CEOs come from different companies, different organizations, different background, different trades, different complete roles. But the fact that you work for a company, you've brought 29 and a half, almost 30 years of mechanical experience into a CEO role. How does that make you? To me, that makes you totally different. How does that make you different? How does that make you feel like coming here or coming to Nextech or a mechanical contractor? How does it makes you as a CEO? To me, see it as a better.
It's a little strange because I have an electrical engineering degree. Aside from having immersed myself, I have been in this industry a long time. And I like to call it the buildings industry because in general, what we do is make buildings come alive. We make buildings livable, workable, playable, safe when they're not comfortable. All of those other things break down. And then all of a sudden, you understand what this industry is all about. Why, things above the ceiling and behind the walls are so critical and important. I do have a passion for this industry. I've been in it a long time. And I think it makes me different because I understand our customers, the expectations. I understand sort of the life of the technician, but I also understand the business side of it, the mechanics of what it takes to not just do the work, but get the invoice to the right people, to get paid, to be able to communicate to the customers a business case for either a replacement or, repairing something. I think I've been exposed from product sales through operations to so many different things in so many different countries, which are all generally a little bit different, whether it's regulations or just the norms of how they work, that it's really created a really great opportunity for me to see different things, but all within the same industry. So when I come across stuff, I'm not surprised.
Right.
I'm not shocked. And I generally believe most problems are solvable.
But from the employee side, we're used to, and Jerry is completely different. meaning that Jerry not only held the owner title, he also had a VP title. He has worked for a big company, has worked for small companies, and yet he turns around and shows up on forklift day, and he's driving the forklift or he's trashing out the roof, and he's done it with me. We've stood on many projects together and get up at 5 a.m, 4 a.m, and work till 7, 8 o'clock at night. For you as a CEO, it helps with your employees to understand that you've been in the trenches for almost 30 years.
Done it as well.
And it goes back into the culture that you're creating the culture of somebody who's leading the company, who's driving the ship, and is saying, listen, when we got a problem, let me know. I'll go down to the engine room and we'll fix that thing, because we got to keep driving that ship. It creates a culture. Now, you're really big into culture. Talk a little bit about culture, what your philosophy is, what your thoughts are.
Personally, I think there are two cultures. There's the culture of what you want the company to be, kind of an aspirational, but then there's what it really is, or maybe what it was. And so people like to say there is a culture, there's an emergence of where aspirationally you want to go, but that will always be dragged to where the company either came from or where it is today. Culture has to be intentionally shaped. So I truly believe having values are the things that start to bind people together, because it's a set of norms that we agree we're all going to work to. For example, safety. In our industry, safety is incredibly important. I mean, I wouldn't dare go into a mechanical room without, my steel toe shoes and being able to wear, the PPE and being able to really walk the walk, not just talk the talk. The work that we do is extremely dangerous. And so without having safety as a value, not just to talk about, but as something we believe in, we hold each other accountable to, it doesn't take the CEO or a manager to walk into the room to challenge your peer that's not wearing those things or approaching something in a safe way to call them out. To me, that's the culture. How comfortable are you with upholding the values that we all believe to and align around?
Now, Jerry's in that same mix, because when I started with the company that he was on, it was a smaller company. One of the things that we spoke about, and I said, listen, I'm into this. I'm into social media. And he's like, yes, I want you to keep doing it. In fact, I encourage it. And he was driving culture to where we had people that were wanting to work for us, and they were coming to us for employment. Jerry, you believe in that same model, correct?
Yeah, I was going to say, culture is something that the less we talk about it and the more we do it, the more it becomes culture, right? So it's like, if we have to talk about culture in every meeting, then we're not behaving the way we're supposed to be behaving, because really you should be behaving and driving a culture, right? Which I think is what you're saying, Jenny. Like, we've got to do it. We've got to believe it. It's got to be who we are as people. We have to want to be safe. We have to want to do the right thing. We have to want to service our customers properly so we can drive the data. And I've always been a believer of culture drives the data and data can influence culture, right? You got to bring the two together. So you're 100% right, Mike. And just drive it and be who we say we're going to be.
And culture will eat strategy every day of the week. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
Best strategy in the world. But if the culture's not set, that strategy will fail.
I have a friend of mine that's not any part of Heritage. He was a produce salesman. But he would say, when people feel good about themselves, they produce good results. And I really believe that. And Jerry's a big
that too.
Which is why he created such a positive work environment, and still does in his new role. He creates a positive work environment of teamwork, culture, safety. We've talked a lot about safety. You have two cultures. You have two philosophies about culture. Safety is a big part.
Yep.
Ultimately, there's a financial that's built into this. And the two cultures, when they're working together in safety, revenue comes up. It comes up in a big way. It's not usually gradual. As you as a CEO, you're balancing culture, you're looking at safety, you're also responsible for a financial piece of it. How much of that, how do they tie in together in your business model? Because we have employees out here who work for you that probably want to know, like, how does this all tie in together?
I actually, when you think about the legs of a stool and how to sort of keep the stool up, you have to think about your employees, you have to think about your customers, and you have to think about the business and the performance of the business to either your investors, whether it's publicly traded or privately held or family held, whatever that is. We're in business to get some type of financial return. So there is that. And the reason you have to deliver to those commitments financially is because you want to continue to invest and fuel back into the strategy to continue to drive toward your vision. So it all goes hand in hand. Now, the beauty of this is not everybody thinks about those three things equally all the time. So if you're a technician, you should be really thinking about your customers. You should be thinking about what tools do I need? How do I work safely? And so you're thinking about you as an employee and you're thinking about your customers. If you're a manager, you're going to be tilted a little bit more to your employees, making sure your employees have what they need, clear expectations, clear training, and being able to properly get the right resources to the customers. So they're going to be tilted a little bit more to employees and customers. As you are closer to the investors, your shareholders, whoever that might be, you're going to spend a little bit more time on the financials. So I think being able to have clear measures on what do you have control of excellence look like and you doing your part in the total system being your customers, your employees, and whoever those investors are. So the financial has to be there, but you also have to fuel that the right way. So if you wake up every day and you go into an office and you pull up your computer and you look at the financials, they're not going to just innately get better just because you're looking at them or talking about them. If you talk about them every day, it'll still be the same. You have to have the right systems in place to really drive the actions that truly impact the financials. And that's really where it comes into the systems around employees or customers, whether it's about operational efficiency, whether it's about customer service level agreements and how you're delivering to their expectations. So to me, mobilizing a team of people is really about that, mobilizing on things that ultimately drive good financials and healthy financials to consistently, produce to the commitments that your investors expect. So it's a balance.
I got you.
Yeah.
I love that. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Wherever she's working with her. Jerry, what are your thoughts?
I'm signed up already. I think you're right. And once the culture shifts and we're established who we are as a group, right? Then it's just managing exceptions and things like that. But I 100% feel like there's a harmony that you have to find between the two, right? And they're both equally important. They drive each other. Yeah, I agree.
I think I understand now why you're in the position that you're in, because for me, who's worked for some very successful companies and not so successful companies, definitely as an employee, we lose track sometimes. So it's nice to have a CEO, a leader of a company, especially here at Nextech, that has been in the field, has driven the ship, and is still doing that, but is working to change the culture and make it a positive place. If you had a business model, like my business model, Jerry's is different. I forgot Jerry's. My business model, do the right thing and risk the consequences.
I think sometimes it's incredibly important for me in a leadership role to be able to be very clear with the employees that you can speak up. If something's not right, you're empowered to speak up. If there's a site that's not safe, I mean, I've certainly had to climb my fair share of ladders. Ladder safety is big. So if that ladder is not safe, you have every right not to climb on that ladder. Stop work, call your manager, and let's figure it out. I think, if the CEO can't say those things, then the employees don't all feel like you. I wish every employee felt like you. Do the right thing, and then, we'll figure it out. Do the right thing for the customer. Do the right thing for yourself, So I truly believe that. I also think leaders need to stay relevant. And, Jerry, I'm sure Jerry gets a smile on his face when he's out walking a job site. He was out a few weeks ago on a site and he called me. He's like, this was amazing. I love it. I mean, look, even a bad meeting with a customer who's really mad at us is better than an internal meeting, in the future. So for me, you have to stay relevant. The only way you stay relevant is to get out with your team and get out with customers. I spend a lot of time in, customer meetings, whether it's a quarterly business review or some type of update. And it's always fascinating, to me to get direct feedback on how we're doing, what they care about, what they need to see more of. And then you go back to the team and you sit down and you say, what happened here? Why are we falling down? And it's because they want to fail. They just don't know. So it's, once you bring an awareness to these things, generally people want to do right by it. So it's just creating the environment and the visibility around things so that we all sort of can, do the right thing, to your point. The other piece is without clear goals and expectations, you have a lot of people working on a lot of different things. So the other piece that I find is somewhat unique in my job is to funnel us around the vital few things that are really going to strengthen that. When we come together and we say, this is what we care about, this is what's going to be important, then we can move mountains, right? So being able to get us all calibrated around the things that are wildly important, the most important things, I think really position a team to truly go further. I mean, everyone wants to be part of a winning environment, feel like you're doing good. So, figuring out what it takes to kind of get past that might come with some hardship. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It just means that hard work you want to see paid off. And it could be little wins, but those little wins add up ultimately to people feeling good about what they're doing, the team they're working with. Nobody wants to go to work and be miserable every day, So sometimes when the environment is tough, maybe the financials aren't there, you got to kind of dig in and start to solve the root cause and then orient everyone around common goals.
One of the things that we talked about in the pre-interview was women and opportunities for ladies in HVAC. You're a product of that. You took advantage of all the opportunities that are out there. I can do this. This job is for me. I want to make the big bucks.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Well, first of all, this is a fantastic industry. I mean, this industry, once you're in, it's hard to get out because there's a great need. And I think it's a fantastic place for women to thrive, to grow, to do so many different things. I think women make great leaders. Women, can bring such great attention to detail. Women are really good multitaskers, by the way. So in a services business,
Well, I mean, you're a mom. You're dealing with kids.
But I'm dealing with kids. I'm dealing with, kind of all the things that all of us are dealing with, right? We're all balancing life. Life is never easy. But what I love about the HVAC industry is, you get to shape the buildings in the communities where we live. You get to sort of know the insides of how that building works. I will never forget, I programmed the lights of the Superdome in New Orleans. That was one of my first early jobs. And years later, they were having a Super Bowl and the lights went out. I don't know if you remember that. The lights in the Super Bowl went out and I was watching.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, I programmed those lights. This is crazy. It's going to be 22 minutes for those to come back on. It's got to warm up. I knew it. I programmed it. I knew the timing. It was a power outage. But nevertheless, I called up my old branch manager, who happened to be a woman. She was retired. I said, can you believe that? She's like, I know. I was thinking about this. This is crazy. So, I think it's a great breeding ground. When I was at Johnson Controls, there were some fantastic women I worked with, but even beyond Johnson Controls in this industry, in the HVAC. So you have women in HVAC, which is a nice way of networking with, the women that kind of have pioneered and grown in this space. We coined this area called the coolest women in the world because, hey, we're pretty cool. And we started to build a network around the women to help us network, get to know each other, regardless of what company you work for, because it's a great network to leverage. So, whether you're going to be a service manager, project manager, whether you're going to work the back office, I mean, the customer call center is a tremendous operation, shared services, being able to really get the bill, collect money, pay our vendors, vendor supplier management. There's so many aspects of this industry that you can learn and grow. It is a great place for women. Start with women in HVAC. It's a great organization. It's a great way to kind of go in and see what are the types of companies that are in this space in general. But, I think depending on where you're coming from, if you're coming from marketing, if you're coming from, shared services, there's so many opportunities out there.
And I think the opportunities are endless.
And you and I talked about this. This is kind of, I've been called a lot of things when I walk into the job site or what have you. And then I just sort of don't care. I don't care what they say. I just kind of push through it. And when you start doing what you do and you love what you do, that naturally starts to come out. And whatever you are that looks different, whether it's race or gender or religion, whatever it is, sort of melts away. When someone's good at what they do, people stop caring what they look like. They just do.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants a good team and someone they can trust, someone who is reliable. You're going to keep showing up. So for me, through the years, I just sort of put that to the side and I continued to push through. If we were talking about football, let's talk about football. I played a lot of golf and I'm a terrible golfer. I shot some skeets and I'm a decent shot, but you do those things and I'm glad that I set myself up to the experiences because I do feel like I've grown and learned. But don't get me wrong. I talk about my kids and then the guys are like, oh, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. I'll talk about shopping. Everybody likes shopping. They don't like to admit it, but whether you're shopping for fishing gear or a boat or a motorcycle, I mean, look, shopping is shopping. Everybody wants a good deal and everyone wants to know, what that new shiny toy is going to look like.
Jerry and I have done some shopping. But Jerry, your thoughts on this, sir? What do you think?
Well, I have a boot problem, so don't get me near a boot store or I'll buy boots. But other than that, no, it's funny. I grew up in a rough neighborhood in South Phoenix, Mike knows, and, she's right on the money. I mean, we didn't care what you looked like or where you came from. Can you play third base? Can you block? We didn't care, right? And so you just start owning who you are and you just start being confident in your abilities. And like she said, you put your team together and you'll have all shapes and sizes and backgrounds on that team and, that can do the job. So I was raised by a single mom in that neighborhood. And I remember when I first started selling in this space, I didn't really know what to do, and my mom said, hey, you're looking for opportunities. And so ask for opportunities. Don't ask for the business. And she said, don't ask them who's currently doing their work. Who cares? If they're looking for somebody, that doesn't matter. And then the other thing she told me was, the person you're trying to get to, you've got to get through their gatekeeper. And I remember her saying that. Don't worry about that person yet. Be friends with the gatekeeper. Well, Jenny and Mike know I'm pretty good at making friends. And so I found that, getting to the right people often has to do with what's inside of you and how people see you. And that authenticity comes through, right? And so, whatever package you're in, whether it's a Italian girl from Louisiana or a big burly guy with a beard, people know if you're the real deal.
And, the cool thing, Ari, you said this, find a place to join, but then once you're there, lean in, show up, be present. That's just your starting point. There's a lot of different things that I did to get to this spot, but I started kind of in one space and then realized, you've got the potential to do more. And so I think, this industry is a great way to kind of get in the door doing something that's maybe specialized, but then you can grow and shape and become different versions of yourself. That's the part I love the most, whether you're, to Jerry said, whatever you look like, wherever you came from. I mean, the barrels of South Louisiana and, my parents told me you're not allowed to date above the I-10. And, I ended up all over the world. I mean, being able to see different cultures, different food. And, and literally my favorite part, I was in China and they love in China to surprise you. They brought out this hairy crabs, but they had hair on them. And I said, can I eat this with my hands? And they were all like, oh. So I started to break the crabs and I ate it with my hands, just like I was told in Louisiana. And they all started filming me and taking pictures. They thought it was great. They were like, oh my gosh, it was like the blending of two very different cultures coming together because we like both crabs. I mean, whether they have hair on them or not, the meat's the same. So it was just really great. It's a lot of fun. I think there's so much potential for anyone in this industry. Just get in.
But let's real quick, because you said something, and when I managed a company that Jerry owned, I used to tell my employees that sometimes in order to go forward, you have to go backwards. And they would look at me out, look, I might have to take a pay cut, but the potential to move forward is even greater. So that pay cut's going to become worth it. It's not always a financial gain. And unfortunately, now we're in a society now where the financial gains is, hey, I want $2. And they're willing to leave a company that has an amazing benefit package, a great vacation package, PTO, all these things that companies have for $1. How do you, as a CEO, address that?
It's very hard, obviously, because people see what's right in front of them. And if they're getting offered $1 more an hour, that's significant to them right now. For me, I went into sales. I had a lot of success, had a lot of variable commission, which was great. You had to go into a leadership position. So as I took a manager job, my pay actually went backwards because it was fixed. So this idea of fixed versus variable, I think, is always unique. People tend to get fixated on their base salary, but your variable comp, your incentives, the programs, your benefits can add up to quite a bit. So I always coach people, got to look at total pay. And as a company, the more you can start to think about these variable types of compensation. We ran one this summer, Jerry and I, and it was a significant payoff for our technicians working hard in the middle of summer. We knew they were working long hours. There's a lot to fix. This was an incredibly hot summer. But when you can bring those rewards to the table, that's not necessarily in their job description or, in their hourly rate. As a leader, you've got to find ways to look at total pay, but communicate that. Because if the employee doesn't understand and know, they might make that decision and they set themselves back.
Yeah. And oftentimes, real quick, Mike, oftentimes your HR person, if you're contemplating a decision or something like that, a lot of times they can put together your total comp so you can see it, right? So you can make a good decision based on your total comps. If anybody's ever thinking about doing something like that, maybe reach out to your HR specialist and ask them, hey, just out of curiosity, what's my total comp? And they can usually pull it for you.
And I think it's super important. And I think anybody, for me, like when I was an hourly employee and moved into a salary, I was like, oh my gosh. I think that is excellent advice from two leaders that are here at Nextech, but also two leaders that have been in the industry. So if you're in that position and that mindset, no matter where you work, whether you work at Nextech, whether you work at another mechanical contractor, a plumbing company, an IT company, those are things that you should be looking at on every move and everywhere you go is what is my total comp? What's my total package? Is it really worth me to go? And sometimes I used to tell my employees that if you're making a job change and you're moving forward, let's talk about it. With that, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Jenny Stentz for coming on, as well as Jerry Hahn. This is Mike Mayberry and the Service Call Podcast.